بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر المحجلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our class on al-Idaah, the light of clarification, a primer, a basic text on the fiqh of purification and prayer. And alhamdulillah, we have been journeying through the section on Salah, in particular the obligatory aspects of Salah, the prerequisites, the wajibat, the necessary components, the sunan, the sunnah acts, the adab, the etiquettes, the makruhat, the disliked acts we should avoid, what breaks the prayer, what doesn't break the prayer. And we've been talking recently about areas around the prayer such as illnesses and prayer, missing the prayer, which is the topic of today. And we have with us, as usual, Brother Hassan. Pain in my finger, unfortunately, due to a little accident. So if I make any squints or faces, it's just because of me not being careful right now. How are you, Hassan? Are you with us? Are you well?
I'm well, yes, Shaykh. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Good, good. So we're on the section on making up missed prayers, page 231, is it?
243.
243, okay. It depends what copy you've got, but I think 243. 243, chapter on making up. On the hard copy I've got 243, and Hassan, we've got the same copy, but some of you may have different editions, or if some of you are following on a PDF version, I think it's a few pages behind. But it's a section on making up missed prayers, which follows on from last time where we talked about illnesses that may mean you miss prayers. So what do you do? And we talked about if you miss too many prayers, over 6 or more, you don't make them up, they're just forgiven. And if you miss 1 or 2, then you'll make them up once you get better. It's only a couple of prayers you've got to do, right? So now the question is generally, and this is a very important question actually, before we start the topic, and I think Hassan would agree, many people, you know many people like this, Hassan, right? Do you think people out there missed a few years of prayers and stuff?
Unfortunately, 100%. I think it's something that's I don't know if it's deliberate. I don't know. It's just people miss prayers over years, and then it gets to a point where you just think, how do I ever catch up? Is it ever going to be possible?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very important. I think I don't think a lot of people kind of talk on this in the masjids in terms of how to start catching up on prayers.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it's a bit of a technical topic sometimes, and it can get a bit difficult. But I think the basics of it, just to encourage prayers and making up of prayers. In fact, before we start the topic, I'll mention that I actually came across a brother who's now praying, and he knows his deen very well, actually, quite active in the religion. When he first started to pray in his 20s, he actually said that I didn't even know that prayer was an obligation when I was younger. He said, I thought prayer was optional. You know, like good people pray, they go to the mosque and they're pious. And the rest of the Muslims, they just, if they want to pray, they pray. And if they're good, they pray. But you're not bad if you don't pray. It's not a problem if you don't pray. So I think, first of all, I think that whole necessity of prayer is an obligation is important. And this is not a person who's not going to the mosque or anything. His parents would take him to the masjid. He learned Quran at the masjid. Yet at the same time, he wasn't fully aware, because it wasn't maybe clarified well enough for some reason to him, that prayer is an obligation 5 times a day. So I think these points are very important, Hassan, that we do actually understand the nature of prayer as a 5 daily prayers or obligations, which means you can't miss them. If you miss them, that's a sin, it's a shortcoming, it's a debt, right? So if you miss them, they don't just disappear. What happens? They become a debt on your soul, not on your bank account, not on your savings, but on your actual accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that means just as when you're accountable for debts to an individual, and he's going to ask you about them and can you give our money back, Allah's going to ask you about the prayers, and where are they, and did you perform them, and why are they missing, and why didn't you pray, and what excuses have you got, and so forth. There's going to be a reckoning, which is the hisab. And that'll be, and the first thing to be, what's the first thing, Hassan, that you're going to be taking account for?
Salah.
Your salah. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet said, if the salah is good, everything after that is good in your accounting, in your hisab, your reckoning. And if the salah is not in order, then what, Hassan?
It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, after that, it's not going to be easy. Everything after that is also not going to be in order, and it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be very. You're not going to look forward to it, basically, right? It's going to be a difficult time. So the salah is the foundation. As-salatu imaduddin. Salah is the pillar, the foundation. What this whole imad actually means, like we say pillar, we mean here not necessarily a pillar of Islam. It is a pillar of Islam, but what we mean by pillars of Islam, and here in the hadith, the Prophet said, as-salatu imaduddin. We mean here it's the supportive pillar of the deen. Imad here means something you rely upon, that you put your weight upon. You know, in the building they have that major kind of what do they call it, like a pillar, or the foundational structure. If you remove that particular wall or that particular foundation, what happens to the building, Hassan? It'll go weak, and it might even collapse. It might just go woof, and nothing's left. So basically what the Prophet was saying in the hadith is, without salah, your whole religion is very on not firm ground, and it could all collapse. So the salah is very, very important. It's the foundation, and therefore we must make sure we take our prayers seriously. We pray them on time. One of the best acts of worship, according to one hadith, is as-salatu ala waqtiha, prayer on its time. And if you miss our prayers, dear viewers, and Hassan as well, then we make sure we make up that prayer. And you might have a valid excuse. You might not be sinful for making up a prayer. That's another point to mention. You may be sinful for missing the prayer because it's deliberate, it's negligence, it's laziness. But at the same time, it could be a genuine reason due to illness, due to unconsciousness, whatever, a lack of resources. You couldn't get to water and make wudu. You were, locked up. You were kept away. You were, wronged. So if it's a situation where you're not to blame, there's no sin on you, but obviously you still have to make up the prayer. That doesn't take away the obligation of praying as well. So you can see how important it is to keep a record of any prayers missed, or to make sure we know that we are praying every prayer. And if you do miss a prayer or have prayers that are missed, then we should start to actually look back. So before we start this section, I just want to make a few more points on missed prayers. So first of all, dear listeners, and if you know anyone as well, especially because you're listening, you wanting to learn, which is fantastic. But as Hassan will say, you probably know, without being specific, of course, Hassan, you probably know several individuals who could do with this lesson, right?
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So it's your duty then, Hassan, to go and speak to them, yeah?
Yeah, no, 100%, yeah.
So that's everyone's duty, our viewers. We need to go and speak to family, friends, and encourage them, first of all, to pray. If they pray their current prayer, that's probably the first step, right? If they're already praying, then to bring in the conversation of making up your missed prayers, and calculating them and how that, and then you can obviously, we can go through that point here. And in fact, I think earlier, end of last year, 2019, I was teaching in Manchester in our classes, and we went through this section, I believe, I think it was this section, a similar section. We were going through something regarding our accountability to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I was looking in a book I just flicking through a book, an old book on the bookshelf, and I pulled out a piece of paper, which I think is still somewhere over there. And this piece of paper was written in 1990 something, right? So come out from over 20 years ago, by myself. And it had on this piece of paper the debts. This is what it was about: the debts I owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there was a time where I missed, some prayers and stuff like this, right? So I wrote down, I've got a debt to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pray this much, whatever fast, zakat, in anything that I could figure out that I'm fallen short on. And I made a record. I wrote a note, and I put it in this book, because that was the book I was reading at the time, alhamdulillah. And I look back and alhamdulillah, it's all done. I look back and I thought, subhanallah, over 20 years ago I made this intention, and now, a while ago, alhamdulillah, it took a while, but it's all clear, alhamdulillah, I've made my debts, I'm debt free. It feels good when you don't have any accountability or response, like that sort of worry of having to answer to someone when you owe them a debt, or you made a promise and you've broken it. Alhamdulillah. Although I admit I'd fallen short, and everyone does that. We ask Allah for forgiveness and for guidance, but at least I'd repaired as much damage as I could, which is alhamdulillah all done now. Alhamdulillah. So I think everyone can do it, and it could take. And it didn't take me 20 years. It took me a lot less than that. But it could take somebody 20 years. Hassan, what do you think? Some people may have that amount of.
Absolutely. Obviously, depending on what debt you actually owe, it could take a long time. But the thing is that this is something that can sometimes get a bit embarrassing. Going asking somebody, you could fear that, what's this person going to think of me?
Yeah.
But I think it's just getting over that first hurdle. And, okay.
It is, yeah. No, I think you make a very valid point there, and I would say for our viewers, our listeners, and yourself, and everyone, is you got to make the other person feel comfortable. I mean, if they're comfortable with myself or the local imam, which they might not be probably, but if they are, and the imams, and we should also make them feel welcome and non-judgmental environment, which is hard sometimes when they see an imam or a teacher, they think, oh, they're going to tell me off, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is not the case. We're here to help, we're here to support, we're here to help people rectify any past mistakes. But yourselves being friends, family, you can obviously approach people in a much gentler manner, or more sort of personal manner, I say. And therefore, I think you guys are really important to helping others. And this is how Islam works. This is how life works. We all have our sphere of influence, and we all have our sphere of concern. So we're concerned about the whole Muslim Ummah. We're concerned about Palestine right now. We're concerned about Kashmir right now. We're concerned about the coronavirus and the vaccinations and what's going to happen, and how it's going to go in the UK. We've got partial lockdown again. There's threats of some other cities going under and towns going under partial lockdown. So it's a concern for all of us. But we've also got the whole world is a concern in a sense, right? Global warming and everything. But really, we've all got our sphere of influence, our sphere of activism, of ability to make a change and do stuff, which starts from home, starts from yourself personally, starts from your family at home, your own household, your own personal family, etc. And then it goes into the neighbors, the community, friends, and maybe even to level of your city, and if you have connections and you have influence, and we should all use that influence to help those around us. And that's where our focus and concern should be. We're all concerned about everything, but where we can influence things, we should be proactive. And although we're doing a fiqh class and we're going to come on to the fiqh, thank you for joining us. It's really important that we understand how important it is for us to be almost like keys that open doors for others, to good doors, right? Open the doorway to good for others, or doorway to kind of salvation, doorway to success and development. This is really important. We mentioned that before we start. Second of all, just to mention an important point, we are accountable to pray from the time we reach puberty, okay, as Muslims. That means the time our body goes through a physiological, if that's the word, change, like in terms of the body fluids, liquids, hormones, and all that, right? And when that occurs, and it could occur at probably 11, 12, 13, 14, probably by then it's done. Wet dream, discharges, ladies have menstrual cycles, they're classified as adults and pubescent, right? And at that time, all obligations, Islamic obligations that they qualified for, that they have like fasting, for instance, and prayer, and if they have wealth, zakat, and so forth, all become an obligation, covering themselves, aura, for men and women. It's not just a female thing to cover yourself, it's for both men and women, and the etiquettes of being with the opposite gender and all these kind of things, they all kick in, they all are now obligations or requirements, and prayer is one of them. So from that point we should have been praying. So let's say from the age of 14 you should have been praying, yes. So when you look back at your life and you think, oh wait, I started praying at 20, how many years is that, Hassan? You got to make up. Come on.
The age of 20.
Yeah, if you start praying at 20 and you should have been praying from 14, how many years have you missed?
You got 6 years.
6 years already there, right? So if you at 20, you got 6. Some people, Hassan, as like you said, they got many years. There's some that start praying at 40. How many years has he got to make up?
Got about 26.
He's got about 26. So you see how delaying these things can have such a big and massive impact on your accountability to Allah. End of the day, it's between you and Allah. But what's your obligation in life? What's your purpose in life? The first one is obedience to Allah, obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to your family and so forth. There's many obligations, but this one is the most important between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's one you've neglected the most. it's a tragedy, really, right? And like Hassan said, it can get very difficult to get over that first hurdle now. How am I going to start making up 26 years, 29 years, 30 years for some, right? It's not easy to start that, but it is possible. And I actually know a brother who made up 21 years of prayers. It was not unbelievable. It's believable. It happened. 21 years. He didn't do it in one day or 1 year. He did it over about 15 years, mashallah, right? But he made up 21 years of missed prayers, right? Alhamdulillah, right? So this can be done. It just needs the first step, the first head, like Hassan said. Okay, so let's actually move into the text and let's talk about some of the rulings of missing prayers and making up prayers, inshallah ta'ala. So, Bismillah, Hassan, if you want to read. Jazakumullah khair.
Performing missed prayers, the ruling with respect to the order of the prayer. To maintain a sequential order between a missed prayer and the current one is necessary. The sequential order is also required between the missed prayers.
Yeah, so first of all, if you miss a prayer, then you've got current prayers, or the current prayer you're in, and missed prayers. Okay, so that's the first thing. You've got two types of prayer now. If you miss a prayer, you've got a missed one, and you've got one you're living in right now, right? If you move on to the next one, then you missed another one. So you can only have one current prayer, and you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, and many missed prayers. So keeping the order between missed prayers and current prayers is a requirement. Okay, we're going to mention when it's not a requirement or when it's excused. That's the next 3 reasons. But first of all, there's no reason whatsoever, and you can pray the previous prayers and then pray the current prayer. You have to do that. It's invalid to change the order. It's not going to be correct. Okay. Similarly, you've got more than one missed prayer. So if you've got 2 missed prayers, to keep the order between them. So practical example, you missed Fajr, you missed Zohar, it's Asr time. How would you pray? You make up your missed prayers first before Asr, and you pray Fajr first because that's the order, and then Zohar, and then the current prayer of Asr. Okay. That order that we've just mentioned is a requirement. If you decide to pray Zohar first, then Fajr, then Asr, that's wrong. That's not going to be valid, right? If you decide to pray Asr, it's the current prayer, or I've got prayers to make up, then you pray Zohar and Fajr, or Fajr and Zohar, is not correct. So first of all, without any other excuses, because we are going to talk about them next, there's no reason whatsoever for you to do otherwise. You will pray in order of missed prayers first, and then current prayers, and the missed prayers will also be kept in their order. But it says, but one thing to mention is that's only if, guys, and you might think, well, I've got 26 years. That's only if it's a little amount of prayers, so 1 or 2. We're not talking about 20 years. You can't do 20 years. That's one of the reasons you can't do it. And we're going to talk about the reasons. They're coming in the reasons shortly. So the first thing, keep prayers in order. So if you miss 1 or 2, that's what it's really talking about. Keep them in order and pray in order of the ones you missed first in their order, and then the ones you currently have to pray, the one you have to currently pray. So when would this order be dropped? Or you would have to pray them in order of missed first and then current. Carry on, Hassan, please.
That which excuses the order. Number 1, the order is excused when the desirable part of the prayer time is insufficient. And this is the most correct view.
Yeah, so obviously if you haven't got time to pray the current prayer, you don't make up the previous ones to miss the current one, right? So a current prayer, meaning here you're going to get to a time where it's awkward or difficult. Awkward as in really close to the end of the time. Not even, let's say, right at the end. It might be half an hour before the end of the time. But you think, wait a minute, I don't want to miss this prayer, delay it too far to the end of the time. That little amount of time left, diqul waqt, then you should pray the current prayer, and then you can make up the other prayer after that. So you drop the order in that situation, okay? I think it's straightforward. A lack of time to pray the current prayer renders it valid for you to pray the current prayer and then make up previous prayers. Remember, this is all in the situation of a minimal amount of missed prayers. A large amount would require an order, as we're going to learn shortly. Bismillah.
And number 2, forgetting is an exception.
Yes, if you completely forget, you missed Fajr, you come to Zohar, you're going to pray Zohar, Fajr first, and then Zohar. You prayed Zohar and you think, I'm supposed to pray Fajr this morning. I forgot to pray it now before my Zohar, so that's okay. You just pray Fajr afterwards, because forgetting is forgetting. You can't really help that, right? That's a valid excuse for not keeping the order of the prayer. Okay.
Third is when the missed prayer becomes 6, not including the witr.
Yeah. So this is what we said. So carry on.
verily the witr is not a reason to excuse the order, even though one must still perform it in order.
Yeah, so when we say the prayers become 6 or more, so this is the third reason now. If you miss 6 prayers or more, so like years of prayers, that's it, there's no order required. So in that situation, you can make up prayers any order. So you will currently pray your prayer every time it's the current prayer, and then you've got, let's say, a year of prayers to make up. You'll make up a few in this prayer time, you make a few later, there's no order left when you've got so many prayers. The actual deciding factor, if you were with us last lesson as well, was if you're in a coma and you miss 6 or more prayers, they all dropped. Here, they're not dropped because you missed them for no reason, but the order is dropped, right? So if you miss 5 prayers or less, so if you missed 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when it comes to praying the next prayer, you'd go in order, and then you pray the current prayer. If you've missed 6 or more, like we just mentioned there, then 6 fard prayers or more, then no order is required. You can pray in any order you want. That's not a problem. It just mentions here that witr is not counted as one of those 6. If you miss 6 prayers, I mentioned fard prayers. However, it does mention a point which is a good point to keep in mind, that when you do make up your prayers, let's say you missed Isha or Fajr, you went to sleep after Maghrib, you didn't get up until 10 a.m. So you missed Isha and Fajr, right? You missed 2 prayers. When you make up the 2 prayers, you're going to pray Isha first. You're going to pray witr second. Witr is also, it's not a fard, it's a wajib, which must be made up. We've talked about witr, okay? And it has to be kept in the order as well. So you can't say I'm going to do fard of Isha, fard of Fajr, and I'm going to do witr at the end. No, you got to do Isha, witr, and Fajr. But you've only missed 2 prayers. Why? Because when it comes to missed prayers, we talk about the fard. Witr is a missed prayer, but it's not considered one of the missed prayers that counts towards dropping the order, or dropping the order, which is 6 prayers of fard, right? So that's the important point to mention. So its order is required, but it's not counted as one of the 5 prayers in a daytime, right? It's not one of the 5 prayers. It's an additional prayer prayed at night after Isha. Okay, the question arises. Okay, I've got, I missed 10 prayers, I missed 20 prayers. I'm making them up. I don't have to make up in any particular order, right? But I've got only 3 left now because I've been making them up, alhamdulillah. Do I have to pray the 3 in order that I've got left? Because, you said when you come to 6 or more, there's no order. But now I've gone below 6. Right, what happens? So I think, Hassan, if you read on, that question will be answered.
The sequential order remains excused, even if one performs some of the missed prayers, so that they are reduced in number.
Yeah, reduced below 6. So you had 10, and now you prayed 6, you got down to 4. Now, do you have to keep an order? You didn't have to keep it at 10 because it was more than 6. When you come back to 4 or 5 or 4, because below 6, the order doesn't become reinstated, or is required. Khalas. Once the order is dropped, you just pray all the 10 prayers in any order you want, and that's it. You will go back to no prayers to be made up. Yeah.
And neither is the order restored if one misses a new prayer after missing 6 old ones.
Yeah, so similarly, you miss 7, 8, 9, 10, you're making them up, and then you miss another one right now, right? Let's say you missed like 2 days of prayers, and you're praying your Zohar, your Asr, your Maghrib, and you're making up these missed prayers, and no order required now, and then all of a sudden you miss Isha that evening. You don't say, I missed 1 prayer now, that has to be done first before anything else. No, because you missed all the other prayers, it just adds to that, or it just becomes a part of them, and there's no order required still. So the order only comes into it when you have 0 prayers missed, and you miss 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That really should have been the first point, I suppose. But that's when order is required in making up missed prayers. We're not talking about the order now, or making up missed prayers. We're not really talking about how to make up missed prayers, etc. We will talk about that shortly. Bismillah.
Okay, if a person offers an obligatory prayer and during this remembers a missed one, even if it is a witr, then the prayer becomes invalid in a suspended form. When the time of the 5th prayer ends, the prayers are converted to valid prayers, and they remain valid provided the missed prayer is made up when the time of the 5th prayer ends, not before. If the missed prayer is made up before the time of the 5th has ended, then the 5 obligatory prayers performed are deemed invalid in essence and stand converted to voluntary.
Yeah. Did you understand that, Hassan?
I would probably need explanation on that one. It's a bit long-winded.
Okay. So this is a what we say an outcome of keeping the order of prayers. If we say that order of prayers is required, okay, what if somebody prays, sorry, there's no forgetfulness, because forgetfulness is a valid excuse. What if somebody deliberately prays the current prayer without making up the missed prayer first, right? The ruling is, as it would have been and it is, we mentioned before, it's invalid. You can't do that. So the current prayer is invalid, it's not a valid current prayer. And that's what it says. But then he mentions something which obviously is where you need the explanation. It says in a suspended form, right? So what that means is we're not gonna. It's not a. It could be a valid prayer. It could not be a valid prayer. It's suspended, right? We're gonna defer the ruling until we find out something else. We can't finalize this prayer. You prayed a fard prayer. You've done 4 rakats fard. And by the way, there's another point to mention before we carry on with that. Sometimes you can pray a fard prayer with the full intention of fard, etc., but it comes out as an outcome as a nafil prayer. Okay? How? You think, I intended fard, but it came out as a nafil. How does that work? For instance, you prayed 4 rakat fard, salat al-dhuhr, Allahu Akbar, yeah? You intended fard, and it's fard, it's actually the zuhr prayer. And you missed the last sitting. And if you remember our previous class, the last sitting is a fard. Okay? So you didn't sit at the end of 4 rakats. You got up and prayed 5th rakat, 6th rakat, and you gave salam. Your whole prayer is no longer a fard. Your whole prayer has become nafil. And I think we did this recently, right? Your whole prayer becomes nafil. I think it's coming in the next chapter on, or the next few chapters on forgetfulness in prayer. Sajdatul sahu, the prostration of forgetfulness. So if you forget something in prayer, so you pray 6 rakats and it's not your zuhr. Why not? Because you didn't fulfill a pillar of the obligatory prayer, which is to sit at the end of it. After 4 rakats, you stood up. You didn't say, which happens to us sometimes, by the way. Hence why it's mentioned in the book. And it's practical as well, because we need to know these rulings. So do be with us for that section when we go through mistakes in prayer and forgetfulness in prayer and the whole concept of sajdatul sahu. Hassan, have you heard of sajdatul sahu?
Yes, unfortunately, I've got to use that in my salahs.
Yeah, I think it's because we're heedless or forgetful or distracted. You sometimes forget how many rakats you're on. You sometimes forget what you recited. Sometimes forget to sit down after 2 rakats. So mistakes can occur in prayer. And alhamdulillah, our deen is detailed and we have the rulings. So what to do in that situation is a future lesson, inshallah. But coming back to this lesson, so not jumping too far away from here. You've prayed a missed prayer. So you missed a prayer. Okay. Now you prayed a current prayer, but and it's a fard intention, like we said, but we're not going to classify as fard because you've not done it in order, right? So what we're going to do, classify as nafil, classify as void. What we're going to do, we're going to wait for what? Wait for you to either make up the missed prayer or not. If you make up that missed prayer within a day, your prayer becomes the one you just prayed, the one that you prayed right now. So let's make a practical example. You miss Fajr, this is what happens sometimes, and it's Zohr time. Now you at Zohr time pray Zohr whilst remembering you've got Fajr to make up. If you forget, it's an excuse. There's no problem in that. Life carries on. If you know you have to make Fajr up and you pray Zohr whilst fully conscious of Fajr, that's what the situation we're talking about now. Your Zohr isn't fully valid, it's suspended. Until what? Until you'd either decide to pray Fajr or not. It says then, I'm going to summarize it, I'm not using the exact words there. If you pray Fajr in roughly the next 24 hours, it's not exactly 24 hours, it says 6 prayers. So if you basically pray Fajr in that time, in the next prayer time, Asr time, or Maghrib time, or Isha time, or the next Fajr time, or the next Zohr time, then so 6 prayer times. So starting from Zohr, that day you prayed till the end of the next Zohr, to be honest, right? So it becomes 6 prayers. If you've prayed 6 prayers and the time has elapsed for 6 prayers, then the Fajr you should have made up, it still needs to be made up, but your 6 prayers are all valid now. the prayer you prayed, the Zuhr, is valid, the Asr is valid, the Maghrib is valid, the Isha is valid, tomorrow's Fajr is valid, today's Zuhr, tomorrow's Zuhr is valid, and then life carries on. And the one prayer you didn't pray still is required for you to pray. However, if you prayed Zuhr and you knew that you had to pray Fajr, and then you prayed Fajr afterwards, what happens? Your Fajr is valid, your Zuhr becomes invalid, it becomes Nafil. That's what it says at the end. It becomes Nafil. If you pray Zuhr, and then you pray Asr, and then you pray Maghrib, it could be just Asr, but you pray Maghrib, and then you decide to make up the Nafil in the evening, your Zuhr, Asr, and Maghrib all become Nafil prayers. Okay? Your Fajr is a valid prayer. You made up the Fajr of this morning. You got to repeat Zuhr, Asr, and Maghrib, right? So you see how it works. Yeah. So if you have 1, 2, and this only applies to somebody who has 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 prayers to make up. This doesn't apply to somebody who's got 20 years of prayer. Right? So this situation here, the beginning of this chapter, is really only applicable to people who are new to missing prayers. Somebody's got a clean record and misses a prayer. This applies to that person. Somebody with 5, 10, 20 years of missed prayers, none of this applies to, because you have so many prayers to make up. It's going to make them up one by one over a large period of time, and there's no order, there's no, pray this first, that first. Just do your best to make up the prayers, which is the next point here. We're going to go on to the prayers to be made up and how to make them up in the next point. So just for that, to summarize that point, if you've got 5 or less prayers to make up, you must keep an order. That order can be dropped due to forgetfulness, lack of time, or the actual order, number of prayers becoming 6 or more. And the point we just done now, if you do have 5 prayers or less to make up and you don't pray them in order, you pray the current prayer, your current prayer is suspended depending on whether you pray the missed prayer or not. If you pray it within the next 6 prayer times, then your prayers become invalid and you've got to repeat them. If you don't pray and you leave it till a day or 2 days later, 3 days later, then your prayers are fine and valid, and you just made up that one prayer, and that's it, your job is done. That's what we've discussed so far. Now is the more practical steps for us, for majority of people, is, okay, I've got missed prayers, okay? How do I go about performing them? Like, I don't know when I missed them, what year I missed them, how many I missed, what time, I have no clue whatsoever. So what do I do? How many do I make up? Tafaddal, Hassan.
If one misses a large number of prayers, one is required to specify each missed prayer.
Okay, so that's just that point there, right? Just that point, sorry, I'll stop you there. So if you miss a large means any number. 6, 7, 10, 20, 50, 1,000, 5,000. Any amount of prayers you missed. And one of the rules of prayer, by the way, guys, which is why you need this specification or is you gotta, when you pray a prayer, you gotta know what prayer you're praying. You got to know that this is today's Zuhr, today's Asr, it's a Nafil prayer, it's a Wajib of Witr. You can't just say Allahu Akbar and pray. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. What are you praying? There's so many different categories of prayer. You need to make sure your intention, it's all about intention, categorizes or specifies, make sure you know what prayer you're praying. So you need to intend, which is going to talk about next, of how you make that particular prayer up. But before we go to the particular prayers, I think it's important to mention how many prayers you actually have to make up. And we already kind of hinted at this. I wanted to introduce it before and go into it in detail now. So let's say, somebody 25 years of age decides, you know what, I've not been praying most of my life. It's wrong. It's an obligation. I feel a bit of remorse. Want to rectify my affairs. And one of the things, and those of you been through this will probably know, alhamdulillah, is, and I personally, would highly, I'm saying it from first-hand experience myself, is there's, alhamdulillah, there's a level, and I think Hassan, you might agree with me, I'll take your input on it in a moment. When you start praying, there's a level of tranquility, not just in your prayer, but in your life, and everyday kind of things you do that you never had before Salah. Right? Life changes if you start praying 5 times a day. And people don't understand. They think it's an obligation, it's a burden. We're going to get about Fajr. But if you actually look at your life with 5 daily Salah, and you look at your life without 5 daily Salah, I'm not talking about the amount of money you've got or the car you drive. I'm not talking about life in that sense. I'm talking about the spiritual life, the feeling of happiness, contentment, connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just taking in life as it is and the difficulties it comes with. your own kind of resilience and spirituality and self-confidence as a Muslim, as a human being, as a servant of Allah, it's massively changed, okay? It massively, it feels a lot different. Right, Hassan? What do you think?
Well, 100%. I mean, you know, there was a time where I hadn't prayed, and going from that to, alhamdulillah, praying. Biggest thing is it gives you an absolute focus, 24 hours a day. Everything's timed. As long as your intention's got to be there, obviously, as well. But everything is very, very focused. You don't feel like a wasted day. Everything's done. You work your work hours out, your family life, everything is worked around namaz. So biggest thing is it gives you focus, I think.
Alhamdulillah, it does. I think that's a very good point you mentioned there. It gives you focus, routine, discipline. The word focus is a good word actually to use because it encompasses a lot of those things. Because discipline is focus. Having your life in order is focus. Just using most of your time, being productive. And not wasting your time. Salah is a massive blessing that I think people don't get. They think it's just a chore. They think it's just a burden. I think it's just one of those things that it's like almost, and I think it's been made that way somewhat as well. The kind of the way it's presented sometimes, maybe from your parents or maybe from people in your community, and the spiritual aspect isn't really emphasized. But for me, and like you said for yourself, and for those who pray and who want to pray, it's a conscious decision. I'm sure that of course I'm speaking from first-hand experience. I'm not going to lie to you. There is a sense of accountability and fear of the punishment that you build. That of course that has to be a part of it as well. You can't just say I don't fear God. Of course you do, and you fear missing the prayer. But it's not what really pushes you to pray. You I can't miss the prayer because I want to stand in the Masala and pray. I want to do that. And this is the Prophet ﷺ. And if you want, obviously we're nowhere near the Prophet ﷺ, but that's where he'd find the most comfort in anything in life. If you think about it, Hassan, where's the one place that you'd find the most comfort, tranquility, serenity, relaxation, worth, the Prophet used to say, Salah, joy, happiness, Salah. It was for the Prophet ﷺ. This is, because why? That is the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And dear listeners, brothers and sisters, that's what it's all about. The stronger your connection to Allah, the happier you're going to be. The closer you are to salvation, the closer you are to goodness in this life and the next. And the weaker our connection with Allah, the more sort of, weaker our lives are, the less, productive, the less, feeling of achievement and happiness and substance, and purpose comes into our lives. We can distract ourselves with dunya and entertainment and enjoyment, but when it comes to real purpose and real worth in life and value, it's all about the level of attachment, or unfortunately the level of detachment with Allah subhanahu, or without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We hope for and we pray for a stronger connection. And by the way, Salah has the meaning of connection. Salah it has a meaning of being connected, right? Being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously Salah in different forms, prayer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so hence connection is part of prayer. So going back to our point, somebody who's 25 decides to bring prayer into their lives, and it's a beautiful experience, and they want to now build on that, and they come to the realization, I've got prayers to make up. That's the topic of today. So how many prayers have I got to make up? So like we said earlier, the person is told when you became pubescent, you became baligh, you went through these changes in your body and hormones, etc. You became accountable, and you need to start praying 5 times a day. I don't know when that happened. I don't remember 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Well, do you remember any time at school or college, or school probably, right? Did you went through a change in your body and stuff? I think around 13 I had a wet dream, or 13, I learnt about this kind of stuff. And yeah, I think when I was about 13, so you just have to pick a date basically. If you can't figure it out, if you can't absolutely figure it out whatsoever, you got no clue, then you pick the age of. So somebody might ask that question. I actually got no idea. You have to go with the latest age you can go to, either the oldest you can be before you have to start praying and fasting and everything, is 15 lunar years. Okay, the fatwa, there's other opinions, but the fatwa is on, the legal verdict that we follow is on 15 lunar years. Why am I saying lunar years? Because the lunar years are shorter than the solar years, and the solar years are what we follow. So January, February, March is the normal calendar. It's called the Gregorian calendar, and that is longer. So 15 years of that would be longer than 15 years of the lunar calendar, which is Muharram, Safar, Rabi al-Awwal, etc. So what that means is, in terms of lunar years, 15 years is less than, so it's going to be 14 years and so many months. I think I worked it out once, 14 years and 7 months or something. From that age onwards, you figure out that age. It's a bit of maths, go back in your life. When was I 14 years and so many months from your birthday, basically? Okay, from that day onwards, I don't know when it started, but that's the latest it could have started, right? So I take the latest date. So from 14 years and 7 months, approximately, I'll think if we can find the date, we'll share it next lesson, inshallah. But you take that. If you know earlier date, actually, I became pubescent at 13. I've got to take 13 and 2 months, right? You go from the earlier date. So from that day, let's just say it was 14 years and 7 months, and we said the person is 25 years old. So 10 years, let's say 25 and 7 months. So 11 years later, 14 and 7 months to 25 and 7 months is 11 years, right? Exactly, I made it exactly 11 years. So there's exactly, or roughly, might be 11 years and 1 day, 11 years and 1 month. It could be any, so it's going to be a specific amount, okay? That's how many prayers, days, years you need to make up. So every day, every year has so many days. So you take leap years into consideration as well, right? And you add up. So 11 years is approximately 3,600, about 4,000, 4,000 approximately days of prayer. Approximately, you'd work it out specifically. So 4,000 Fajr prayers, 4,000 Zohr prayers, 4,000 Asr prayers, 4,000 Maghrib prayers, 4,000 Isha prayers, and 4,000 Witr prayers have to be made up from the day you became pubescent till today, because you didn't pray any of them. Now if you think, oh wait a minute, I think I prayed 1 or 2 here and there in Ramadan, you can estimate, I know probably in that 11 years prayed about 20 Fajrs, 50 Zohrs. I attended Jummah, so once a week the Zohr prayer, which is Jummah, is fine, right? So there's 50 Zohr prayers a year I could take. So you can estimate how many you actually did pray throughout that time and take them off. And what probably you do now is make like a tally chart or a record saying, look, 4,000 prayers missed, but I prayed about 20 Fajr, so 3,980 Fajr to make up. The Zohr, I prayed Jummah often, and sometimes I pray Zohr on Sundays and Saturdays. So I probably prayed in the last 11 years about 300 Zohr. I think definitely, make sure you're definite. Right, I've got 3,700 Zohr prayers. Asr I already prayed, maybe prayed a few times. I remember Ramadan, maybe in the last 11 years, about 20, 30 prayers. So wherever you feel confident and you're sure you've prayed, you can take them off the previous 11 years, and you're left with a number. So you're left with 3,980 prayers of Fajr, 3,700 of Zohar, 3,800 of Asr. Whatever you've got, that's now what you've got to make up. Okay, so you take account all the prayers you've missed, all the years you've missed, then you account for what you may have prayed, and you've prayed in a sense. So you estimate that, but to a sense of, I know at least it was this, and then the remainder is what you've got to make up. So it's not going to be exactly the same for every prayer, but it'll be roughly the same. And then you start making those prayers up. That's when we need to specify the intention. You can't go back and literally say, I'm praying on the Fajr of the 1st of January 2015. Right, done that. Right, now I'm praying Fajr of 2nd of January 2015. I've done that. I'm now praying Fajr, because it's very, very difficult, right? Tomorrow you're going to come back and mention a date in your heart. No, there's a method of specifying which prayer is, which Hassan will now read. Bismillah.
Just before I read that quick one, what about namazes you prayed prior to puberty?
So you get a reward for them, and that's a blessing for you, but they don't count towards the prayers missed after puberty. Okay. No.
If, however, one wishes to simplify the matter, then he may specify the first Zohar prayer due on him or the last Zohar prayer due on him. Yes. The same rule applies when one is observing unperformed fasting of Ramadan of the past 2 years. The requirement for specifying in these these cases is one of two correct legal views which oppose each other.
Yeah, so good, thank you. So it's easy, and it sounded complicated and rough, tough, but it's easy. You get the number of prayers, so let's say 3,800 Zohar prayers or Fajr prayers, whatever, and all you say is, I've got 3,800 to make up, and you keep a record of this, right? So we've got apps and we've got notepads, and you can keep a piece of paper. I did a piece of paper. I used to do a tally chart on it. Tally chart is good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And whenever you get to the total, you cross it off. You get a new page. Whatever. It's practical, easy steps you need to take. So 3,800 prayers of Fajr to make up. Let's just say it's that. Right. You don't have to mention the date. You say like the first one I missed, which is the first one ever it was. I'm praying that right now. Fantastic. You've prayed it, you've done. You've got 3,799 left. Right? You make a record of that one prayed, right? So what do you say now? You say, the first Zohar I have to make up, or the first Fajr, sorry, you're talking about, I have to make up. Which is the first one? It's not the one you've prayed, that's done. The first one you've got now is the first of the 3,799. You've done that. 2 done. 3,798 left. Right. The first Fajr I have to make up. I'm praying that now. Allahu Akbar. It's going to be the first one of the 3,798. Okay, 98. So it's going to be 3 down now. So all you have to do is keep on saying the first one I've got to make up, or intending it, because saying it doesn't it's not what it requires. Intending this prayer, you don't have to know the date you missed it on. You just got to know it's the first one. It's the first one. It's the first one. Because every time you do a prayer, it's no longer the first one. It's done. The first one becomes the next one. That's now the one I've got to make up. That's the first one on me to make up. And every time you say the first one, it just counts for one of the prayers. And in that way, you don't have to figure out what date and year it was or anything like that. It's just a case of because thing is, if you take in the specific prayer, then you got to think like in Ramadan, which prayers did I pray? Which prayers did I pray? Because I prayed some prayers in Ramadan. I don't know, right? So it becomes very complicated. If you just say the first, every time you pray, it's just the first prayer you need to make up on your list of prayers to make up. And it's going down one by one, and it works, right? So it's just basically a simple concept. It makes it a lot easier. So practically speaking, all you got to do is know the number of prayers you need to make up of Fajr, of Zuhr, of Asr, of Maghrib, of Isha. When you make your intention, you make an intention for Fajr. It's the first Fajr I have to make up. I have to do Qada in Arabic. Allahu Akbar. The first Fajr I've got to make up. Qada, Allahu Akbar. And you keep saying that for all. And once you've done your 3,800 Fajr prayers, it's all finished. And you've got a clean slate for Fajr. Similarly for Zuhr, you do the same. Asr, Maghrib, Isha. There's no order, so you can do all of Fajr first, all of Zuhr second, all of Asr third. You can do one of Fajr, one of Zuhr, one of Asr. Every day you can do that. So there's no order required. Or you should have a methodology. Methodology helps achievement. Lack of methodology is a failure in a lot of things in life, guys. This is a bit of a tip for you. I was watching a video on speed, or not speed reading, but reading more and faster with comprehension, not just reading for the sake of fast reading. And he was saying that there's 3 factors why you don't read well. Just a little tip he has on the side. One is a mindset. You don't believe you can. You just think, I can't read fast. It's just your mindset and the way you think. Get that out of your head, right? Number 2 is because you what were we just talking about now? This reason right now. Methodology, yeah, because you don't have a methodology of how to improve your reading. And in the video, it gives you a methodology. Basically, it says read what you can for 4 minutes. Stop there. Go back, read it again in 3 minutes. And if you don't get to the end, try and just get to the end, right? Go back and read again in 2 minutes. And this time, just go fast. Don't worry about comprehension. Fourth time, go read it in 1 minute and go fast and don't worry about comprehension. Then read the next 4 minutes and compare. So in 4 minutes you read this much. Let's say you read 2 pages, yeah, and then you went over it in 3, 2, 1 minutes. The next 4 minutes, time yourself, you'll see you read more than 2 pages. Methodology, right? So if you've got methodology to improve your speed reading with comprehension now, so you're going to read the same pace as the first 4 minutes in the second 4 minutes. Now your pace isn't going to change in your understanding. Your methodology is not going to change in the sense that I read 4 minutes, I got 2 pages. I read the same way in 4 minutes, you'll find you get more. Why? Because you got to have a methodology to improve your reading speed and comprehension and not lose comprehension. So it was a nice video. If you want to go, it's on YouTube. It's called the channel is called the Productivity Game by Nathan Lazaron or something like that, right? Lazarian or something. Productivity Game, and the title of the video is Limitless. It's the book. It's a book review, by the way. So he's read a book called Limitless, which is about this, and he summarizes the book in it's like an infographic video, animation video. It's him speaking over it. So it's good. It's not just a person speaking. It's actually diagrams and pictures and sentences, and there's methodology in there. And the third thing was mindset, methodology, and motivation. Motivation was the other one. You need motivation, and and he says that. So he says, look, and I could make you all pick a book and read it. He says, if your mentor, your teacher was to say to you, the secret of life is in this book, you've got to go home and read it to find out a lot of secrets. You'd go home thinking, I've got to get that book. You'd be on Amazon ordering it, right? And you'd be excited to read it, and you will read it. You will read more of that book than any other book on your shelf. Why? You've got motivation. What's the motivation? The recommendation, the encouragement of your mentor. Obviously, he says mentor here, your sheikh or your, local scholar, or whoever it is, right? Your father even, right? You've got motivation. So how do you get motivation? That's what he talks about as well. And you'll read more. So this is really, really good. It's only like a 7-8 minute video. It's not a long video, by the way. It's not one of those hourly long videos. It's a summary of a book in about 7-8 minutes. It's really, really good. I found it very beneficial. And the video itself motivated me just to read, let alone a particular topic. And that's what he said. The topic you pick, it might depend on how motivated you are to read it or not, and this, that, the other. So there's lots of factors which Bismillah. Watch the video, guys. Right? If somebody finds it, you can put it in the comment section so everyone else can follow the video or get a link to it. It's called Limitless Productivity Game channel. I follow these kind of channels where there's loads of videos on this channel about how to improve your sleep, how to improve your reading, how to exercise better, how to manage and be a good manager and a boss at work kind of thing, how to be productive in your day, as in what times you should work, what times you shouldn't work. There was a video on that which was good. It says your body clock shuts down around, 6 hours, is it, after you wake up. So most people wake up around 7-8 o'clock in the morning. So by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you need rest. And this is where the qaylula in Islamic term comes in. So what was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? At midday, 12, because we wake up earlier, don't we? You have a nap. That is what you need. Science is showing that you at this time lose productivity, and employers are realizing this as well, because it's all about money and capitalism for them. So it's good for your employee to have a break at that time. Lunch break does the trick, I suppose. But break as in, he actually says just sit down and relax, just close your eyes and go to sleep. There's actually a video on how to have the nap itself. So how do you have a good nap during the day? It's called nappuccino. Have you heard of this nap called the nappuccino? Right? Hassan, have you heard of the nappuccino?
No, that's the first time I've heard it.
So guys, check these things out. It's a fiqh lesson. I don't want to go too much into this, but I really like this YouTube channel. I've been following it and I'm watching the videos. But it's something called a nappuccino. Go and look that up. What's a nappuccino? I don't know if it's on Google or if it's a term used yet, but it's in one of the books he went through, or he summarized. It's a really good thing. So just to give you, I won't tell you what a nappuccino is. I'll tell you next time, inshallah. If you remind me, Hassan, I'll tell you next time what a nappuccino is.
I'll Google it after we...
Yeah, I think people probably are Googling it now if they're watching, figuring out what this is. And it might come up, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't know if it's on Google yet or not. It might be. But yeah, it's a new concept. It's a book that was released not too long ago. That it's a new term, coined term, that this person came out with. I think either the person in the book or the YouTube channel coined the term. I think, I'm not sure, but I just come across it then a few months ago. So I think it's a newish term. But anyway, let's get back to the fiqh, which was productivity. We'll find that we've how much we've got to make up. We'll find a way to make things up. Methodology is what you need to make up your missed prayers. So that's why we went off this tangent into methodology and productivity and that kind of thing. Methodology is very important. And the way you find methodology is either by seeking advice, either by reading a book, either by figuring out from life experiences. But you need to apply a methodology. You don't just have one, apply one, right? Go through a system of doing something, right? That's what will get you to be productive. So next point was, likewise, if you got missed Ramadan fasts for many years, which you could have as well, same concept, isn't it? you didn't fast for 3, 4, 5, 6 years of your life. So I've got, let's say, on average 30 days a year. 5 years is 150 fasts. Do I have to make them up? Yes, you do. Fasts are an obligation that doesn't disappear if you miss it. It has to be made up, and it's a debt to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we explained with Salah. Okay, and there's a question. He says, what if you pass away and haven't made up all your prayers? Is there a compensation that can be made to make up for it by your family? We discussed this at the end of last week, both for fasting and for prayer. We talked about the compensation. So if you go to al-Idaah and you go to the very concept before this chapter, so before he talks about missed prayers, it talks about the idea of writing a will to pay off for the prayers and the fast that you missed during your lifetime that you didn't then perform. Of course, if you perform them, there's no penalty or debt or will required to be paid. But if you do miss them, then for every prayer and every fast, we said, you pay a fidya, which is, as explained last week, nisf sa' min burrin or sa'un min tamrin, which is a measure, half a measure of wheat or a measure of dates, which can vary from £4 to £40 or so, right? The minimum amount. It's the same concept as fitrana, same amount as fitrana, or fitrana is for the end of Ramadan and for Eid, but this is fidya is for Ramadan as well, for those who can't fast. This is for those who can fast but pass away without having made up their fast. There is a compensation that can be made. You need to write in your will, so the family then realize that, okay, so much of the wealth needs to be used to pay off. And we talked about how if the wealth isn't enough, remember how we talked about this methodology and so forth. So that's been mentioned last week, and that is in our, so if you check back class 14, and the end of class 14, this is class 15 today, you'll find the explanation in detail of how to make up and compensate for missed fasts and prayers that you didn't make up in your lifetime and you passed away, in the whole ruling regarding that. It was a longish discussion, so I won't go into the details. But the point here is, if you've got multiple Ramadans, it doesn't matter. You don't have to say from this Ramadan or from that Ramadan, from that Ramadan. All you have to say is, the first fast I've got to make up. You perform it. You've done it. Right, the first fast I have to make up. It's the same thing you say, because the first fast is always going to be not the one you've done, the one after it. Because the one you've done is not it doesn't need to be made up anymore, so it's off the list. So you had 150 fasts. The first fast was number 1, right? Right, so number 1's gone. What's number 2's next? Okay, the first fast I've got to make up is number 2. 2's gone because you made it up. The first fast I have to make up is number 3, because number 2's gone, you made it up. So because it's the same concept with prayers, and you can say the last as well, by the way. So you can say the last fast I have to make up that I missed, I'm intending for tomorrow, and you intend. Okay, it's number 150, right? Because you missed 150 fasts. Okay, the day after, they say the last fast I missed that I've got to now make up is 149, because the last one, 150, is done. It's not on your list anymore. So 149 will be next. So it doesn't matter whether you say the first, because it's mentioned before, you could say first or last. You just got to pick either end, right? And that's how you make the intention to make a specific fast. Otherwise, it's not a specific fast. I intend to make up a fast of what I've missed. You can't do that. You can't fast a fast. It has to be the first fast, the last fast, or the actual fast. Now, if you missed one fast on the 3rd of Ramadan last year or this year, you can actually say that. You can say, in Ramadan this year, I missed the 3rd day of fasting, the 3rd of Ramadan. My intention is to make up that fast. Obviously, you've got one fast. It's easy to specify. That's not a problem. You can just say, I want to make up the one fast I've got to make up. Is that one in Ramadan? Job's done, right? As long as you specify the fast, that's how it works. And it doesn't matter if they're from multiple Ramadans. You just keep on saying the first fast, the first fast, the first fast. And the final point in this section, I believe, Hassan.
Okay. A person who becomes Muslim in enemy land and does not know the requirements of Islamic law is excused.
Yeah, brilliant. Alhamdulillah. Brilliant. Alhamdulillah. In that, this applies to our listeners out there that may have embraced Islam, because it says there, Man aslama, whoever accepts Islam in a non-Muslim land. It says enemy lands. Dar al-Harb here literally refers to non-Muslim lands. In the olden days, they used the word Dar al-Harb because it was very black and white in the past, right? Basically, there was land of Islam, and there was much more hostility, and any other land was considered to be hostile, and not from both sides. That's how there was a lot less tolerance, and it was the Muslims that were bringing the tolerance forward, which is attested to by Western sources as well. They were surprised, those that did visit that part of the world, especially the Ottoman Empire. They found the tolerance towards other religions, and within the religion itself. So even like Muslims to Muslims, they found it, different Muslims over here, they found it very surprising, and it's written in some books here in the West. Some historians, some scholars, they found it quite amazing that there was such tolerance. Well, in Europe there was a lack of tolerance. I think the tide has turned, and there's probably more tolerance here than there is in most Muslim lands, right? But the point here is, it was black and white in the past. It's a lot more grey now. So you're living in what we'd say non-Muslim lands, yet Islam is not, hopefully, an enemy or anything like that. Although there is Islamophobia and stuff. But generally, within your community in general, obviously there might be difficult communities to live in, but generally in a multicultural society, diverse community, all religions get on with each other, all cultures get on with each other. My neighbours are of another religion. I've only got one neighbour because I'm the end house. My other neighbour's a shop, a local shop. There's actually flats above it, so yeah, they are the neighbours. We get their post sometimes. It's a headache. You got to go up to the flats. That neighbour's not bad because it's just next door. The other ones, you got to buzz the flat and everything, right? So yeah, we should be a bit more accommodating and so forth. So the ruling is the same though. We live in a non-Muslim land. Somebody now embraced Islam in these lands. I said earlier, a young Muslim lad who's older, when he said it, that he didn't know prayer was an obligation. He's born in a Muslim family. He's a born Muslim. He has no excuse. If that had been a convert to Islam, that's a valid excuse. That's what he's saying here. Somebody embraced Islam. Let's take the scenario. Somebody embraced Islam just before Ramadan. Ramadan comes. They hear about fasting, but they never told you have to fast. So they decide to test out fasting in Ramadan, and they fast 5 fasts. And then somebody says to them after Ramadan, so how was fasting this year? And they say, I only fasted 5 of them. It was a bit tough, difficult. And then he's told, or she's told, but you had to fast them. And he says, no, I didn't. I thought it's an optional thing. What do you mean optional? Because I'm a new Muslim, don't you get a chance? Well, no, it's not. The person doesn't have to make them up, because he or she did not know of the obligatory nature of fasting, or it says shara, it says all rules basically, or prayer, or giving zakat, or even halal and haram, until they're taught. This is in what? In non-Muslim lands for a new Muslim. So what does that exclude? If it happens in Muslim lands, so whether you're a Muslim or whether you're a new Muslim in non-Muslim lands, in Muslim lands, sorry. So you're in, let's say, Makkah and you accept Islam, no excuses. Yeah, born Muslim, no excuses. Or you're in a non, so that's not the situation, because it's not a non-Muslim land. Or if it's the situation where you're in a non-Muslim land, like here, I'm in UK right now, Manchester, but you're a born Muslim, no excuses. The only time you're excused if you're in a non-Muslim land, like here, like Europe. Definitions may change in the future, you never know, but it's currently non-Muslim lands, and you are a new Muslim, embrace Islam, your parents were not Muslims, or you weren't raised as a Muslim like from childhood, right? Then what? Then you are excused regarding the rulings of Islam, whether that's halal and haram, prayers, fasting, until you are taught. So that could be you've been Muslim for 5 years and then you learn something new, and it happens. Sometimes I come across new Muslims, in classes, questions online sometimes, and they don't know. It's not their fault. Born Muslims have had 15, 20 years of education. They don't know stuff still, right, Hassan?
Absolutely,
yeah. So you can't blame somebody who's new to Islam and after 5 years doesn't know something. Come on. It's actually not bad at all, that. It's just a case of they're learning their deen. So they are excused until that point. Yeah. Well, as soon as they learn, though, as soon as they're informed and they've learned, there's no excuses left, right? Were you going to say something, Hassan?
No, I'm assuming, obviously, in these lands now, that the availability of teachers, knowledge about your responsibilities as a Muslim is more readily and easily available.
Yeah.
So for them people, is it necessary that they quickly get onto that, or?
So in terms of good point actually. Yeah, obviously there's a lot more access now online, YouTube. You can learn all sorts of stuff. It's a good point you make, right? And you can go to classes online now, and you can within your environment, because Muslims are, because like I said, it was black and white in the past. A non-Muslim embracing Islam in the UK was one of 0 in his community, right? He was the first one or the second one or the 10th one. So there was nobody. There was hardly any masajid, right? There was a few, and they were from actually a born British people. English, Anglo-Saxon. They weren't from abroad. So there was very minimal amount of Muslims. So yeah, you could say that there wasn't even an opportunity to learn anything. Whereas now there's so much more available, so much online. Obviously, communication. You can phone someone. You can. That doesn't take away, though. Although we are in a world of globalization, right? That's what it is. Although globalization is there, because it doesn't matter where you are, you can watch what's going on in Makkah and Medina. But it doesn't take away from the ruling, so it doesn't change the ruling, because the rulings are connected to the actual physicalities where you are. So are you physically in a land? If the classification of UK changes, then that changes the ruling. But currently, as far as I know, it's classified as a non-Muslim land. Yeah, let's not go there, right? It's a non-Muslim land, and it's problematic to say otherwise from a legal perspective and a kind of cultural, social, political perspective as well. And then seriously, from a Sharia perspective, it's a non-Muslim land, right? So for that ruling, it is anybody who makes Islam in this land, regardless of the availability of the education, is there, but it doesn't make the difference to the ruling here, which is a new Muslim who is excused until he or she learns about the deen. And once they learn, there's no more excuses. They're accountable to learn and to practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so very important point, I think. It's very practical, very important. And it doesn't apply to born Muslims, okay? So you might say, oh, I wasn't taught well, I wasn't... No. It was your parents' responsibility, so they're accountable, by the way. If your parents weren't around, your guardians. And of course, there are situations where people are, in neglect or in, difficult circumstances. They lose their parents. It's nobody's fault sometimes. But if they were raised up as Muslims and they were given halal... So one situation actually, I've heard of this, is where non-Muslims adopt Muslim children. Okay? I actually had a case of this. I spoke to a child protection officer for a whole council area, and he explained to us, he was part of an Islamic madrasa, because we were talking about that the child actually has to be, if he's classified as Muslim, to be given the fair opportunity to be a Muslim and treated like a Muslim. So the non-Muslim parents would actually bring the child to madrasa and back home. They have to give that as part of his upbringing, and it was his responsibility, the child protection officer, to make sure that was happening, right? They have to provide halal food at home for the child, right? So they have to observe whatever they, gonna have as their standards, okay, from a Muslim standard, Muslim perspective, everything, but they have certain things. So one of them is obviously, the going to the mosque at certain times, which should be facilitated like on holidays in Jummah, halal food, the madrasa after school, learning the Quran. And that means a born Muslim who was considered a Muslim child, lost his parents, or whatever reason is in adoption, come from abroad, refugee, is being raised as a Muslim, so he's got access to Muslim education, he's been taught Islam, and he most likely will know all the rulings. So really, anybody who's a born Muslim, brought up as a Muslim, has no excuse. Okay. Now, if that child, however, was not given the Muslim upbringing, he was a born Muslim to Muslim parents, for whatever reason, due to refugee status, due to fleeing from whatever, or orphaned, and now is raised up as a non-Muslim, then that person has the excuse. Look, I was never taught as a child. I wasn't raised up as a Muslim. I was born to Muslim parents, but I didn't have that. And now I want to be a Muslim. I want to practice Islam. Are you telling me I've got to make up 20 years of prayers? No, you don't. Okay? You may start at 30, realize Islam as your religion and want to practice it. From 15 to 30, do you have to make up prayers? Do you have to make up fasts? No. Why? You weren't raised up as a Muslim. You weren't born in a Muslim land, and you never had the Muslim education, etc. And therefore you're excused. I think these are points which may affect certain members of our society. So it's important to mention them, and for you to maybe help them if they are some one or similar to that, inshallah ta'ala. Right, Hassan, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think the only one category that out of that what I would ask about is you're born in a Muslim household, however your parents, because you mentioned before that the parents are responsible to give them the Muslim teaching, the Muslim upbringing.
Yeah.
So if you're born in a Muslim household, however your parents, aunties, uncles, whatever, immediate family are not religious and haven't taught you that anything relating to your deen, What then? Because technically you're born in a Muslim household, but as far as your Islam is concerned, you've just got a Muslim name. Your parents didn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
So as far as you were concerned, it was never told or taught to you that your namaz, the obligations on you. You get to the age of 25, 20, 25, you're a mature person and realize, you know what, I'm born Muslim, this is who I am, this is what I should have been doing. Then what happens? That's a possibility.
That's a possibility, yeah, is. And to be honest, I would love to say, yeah, the person's forgiven, but there is a responsibility on yourself to some degree that, you know, you're a Muslim, you see Ramadan every year, your family is fasting. Like you're saying, they might not be fasting, they might not be practicing Islam, they might not say a word of Islam to you, they didn't send you to the madrasa. So, and this is a reality, by the way. I've met individuals like this. They have no connection to Islam, yet their parents were fully Muslim and they're born as Muslims. But they now want to practice Islam. They actually want to be Muslim as well. Some have left Islam, some have not got a connection to Islam, so they're not even practicing or even have that connection to Islam. But I met a few that obviously I want to learn now and change themselves and be Muslim, like practicing Muslims. So then it's a tough one because they did have Muslim parents. Muslim parents were neglectful. They weren't sent to the madrasa. They had the opportunity to go. You're not really going to classify them as somebody who's embraced Islam because they haven't. They've been born Muslims all their lives, just not been taught anything. So it's really difficult based on a very fiqhi legal aspect to say, yeah, you're excused because it doesn't fit in with the law that we've got in the books. And is generally what scholars have said, but from a very practical or personal perspective to that person, it does feel like that's a bit tough and harsh, that they never had a chance to pray or fast. They were never taught that at all, and they weren't in a Muslim country and didn't receive a Muslim upbringing, and so forth. So there may well be, books are books, but remember, fatwa is fatwa. I'll explain that. What that means is, what's written in the books was written thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, even tens of years ago, some books, right? But fatwa is based on circumstances, is based on contemporary issues, and certain fatwa is never going to change. 5 daily prayers, the rakats, the rulings and stuff, not going to change. It's basically the same. But like I said, this was black and white before, hence the ruling is there. Now, as we've just thrown a lot of grey over all of that, right? Generally, the whole concept of where you live now in Islamic lands, non-Islamic lands, the level of education available, we talked about globalization, people in such circumstances where they're in Muslim households are being taught Islam. These were unheard of before, and these circumstances didn't exist. So fatwa comes with a change of circumstances, right? Not just a change, or just time goes on and we change rulings for no reason. Circumstances do affect certain rulings, and this is one of them, I suppose. And yeah, maybe, I would speak to a mufti and just have a discussion with a few scholars and see where the other opinions are in this, or where the fatwa is in this. But for now, I'd say yes, there's a possibility of saying to that individual, look, don't worry about your previous prayers, fast, just start from today and start afresh. That sounds like what would be, but we can't just go by emotion or what personally we should prefer. We've got to go by fatwa. And inshallah, there is fatwa that would support that. We'll try to clarify that for next time as well. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I think we'll stop there because the next chapter is on joining the Imam if you started your prayer already and the Imam starts, and joining the prayer late as well. So joining the prayer in different circumstances. So you're praying alone, congregation starts, what do you do? You've just joined the congregation late, what do you do, etc. So this whole idea of joining congregation is next week's topic, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you for joining us today. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.